نستفتح بالذي هو خير. يقول عز وجل: وقل رب زدني علما. O Allah, increase me in knowledge. All the praise is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our creator and sustainer. And may the peace and blessings of Allah be on his final prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, all of the prophets of Allah. We bear witness there is no God but Allah, and we bear witness that Muhammad is his final messenger. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran commanded us, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. Hold all together to the rope of Allah and do not be divided. And it's evident that throughout the Muslim world today, there's a great deal of division that leads to interfighting and leads to a lot of misery. Many people are dying unnecessarily. And that is a byproduct of our various misunderstandings about our own religion. While we all believe in one God, La ilaha illallah, and we all follow the same prophet, Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and we all believe in the same book, the Quran, and we all claim to follow Islam, yet because of our different interpretations of the faith, we have divided our ummah into small segments fighting one another. And that is in total contradiction to the commandment of Allah to be united. As a result, the Muslim Ummah is weak, suffering, and the most that are suffering in the Ummah are the young people. Over a century ago, Muslims were divided, and they were following different understandings and interpretations of Islam that took centuries in development. So Muslims in West Africa developed completely differently from Muslims in India. Muslims in Europe developed completely different from Muslims in Africa. And because of the distance, the geographic distance between these nations and the minimal interaction between them, it was not possible to see how different they are from each other. Within the last 100 years, as transportation became easier and flights became possible, trains and cars, as communication became easier, radio and television, and with the internet, and now we see instantly people from all over the world. And right here in this country, we see Muslims coming from different parts of the world, and for the first time seeing different brands of Islam, different interpretations of Islam. And we have these internal conflicts within our Muslim community nationwide. We notice most of the masjids are divided along ethnic or cultural lines. So you see an Arab masjid here, a Pakistani masjid there, a Bengali masjid there, a Turkish masjid there, and so on and so forth. Because we find it hard and difficult to come together under one roof, because our interpretation and understanding of Islam is different. That happened over centuries of interpretations. When we came together, we can see how different we have become. Just like two brothers from the same parents, but growing up in two different nations, speaking two different languages, raised to eat different foods, Even though they are blood brothers, but when they come together, culturally they are not compatible. And this lack of compatibility between our Muslim cultures is causing a lot of friction and a lot of conflicts. And the children are paying the price for it. Millions and millions of Muslim children are lacking the minimal requirements for living and education. Their hopes for the future are dismal. And the question is how we can overcome this difficulty. When Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came with Islam, the people in his time, the Arab tribes, they thought of themselves as people who followed Islam according to the religion of Ibrahim and Ismail alayhi salam. And what's evident is they used to say that we are the custodians of the Kaaba, we are followers of Ibrahim and Ismail, and they used to claim that Ibrahim and Ismail were the first to put these idols in and around the Kaaba, when that could not be further from the truth. So over centuries between Ibrahim and Ismail and the time of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the cultural changes that took place led to a completely different version of the faith, which was totally not Islam, it was shirk. Today, there are many Muslims who commit shirk too, who will not be under a true definition of Islam, will not be considered Muslims, will not be considered, muwahhideen. There's too much shirk in their practices. Even though they say La ilaha illallah Muhammadan Rasulullah, well, Quraysh used to say that. They used to say, وَلَئِنْ سَأَلْتَهُمْ مَنْ خَلَقَهُمْ لَيَقُولُنَّ اللَّهُ. They did not think Allah, Uzza, wa Manat were creators. مَا نَعْبُدُهُمْ إِلَّا لِيُقَرِّبُونَ إِلَى اللَّهِ زُلْفًا. But they believe in one God. Just like Christians today believe in one God. But when you look at the practice, it doesn't reflect it. So when Muslims today around the world, you ask them, they all say La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. You say, why are you fighting another Muslim who say La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah? Say, because we are right and they're wrong. Say, who is to decide who's right and who's wrong? Because every group claiming to be right and the others are wrong. What Allah has forbid us from doing is precisely that. He said, وَلَا تَكُونُوا مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ مِنَ الَّذِينَ فَرَّقُوا دِينَهُمْ وَكَانُوا شِيَعًا كُلُّ حِزْبٍ بِمَا لَدَيْهِمْ فَرِحُونَ. Do not be among the mushrikeen, the polytheists, who worship others beside Allah. Those who have divided their religion into groups, each group believe they are on the right path. They're happy with their interpretation. You say, how are they mushrikeen today if they're saying La ilaha illallah? They are because Allah commands us to be united, we're divided. Allah commands us to love one another and be one ummah, we're killing each other. So we are putting our desire, our interpretation above the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the classical definition of shirk. We don't have to worship an idol to be a mushrik. We're worshipping the idol of our egos, our interpretations, our shuyukh, madahib. When you present evidence from the Quran to someone, what Allah said, and he says, I don't care, my shaykh said this and that. And that is shirk. Because if I give you an ayah from the Quran, you cannot have any human being's opinion against it, no matter how learned they are. So Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, to deal with that problem, did not follow what some groups today trying to follow. In the last 50 years, we have seen political movements around the Muslim world trying by force to coerce Muslims to unite, thinking that if we follow this political leader or that political leader and force Muslims together, they're going to unite. All what they are doing is they are creating more problems, because more Muslims today are dying than 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago, at the hands of Muslims. And it's not because of outside interventions, it's because of internal misinterpretation. Because it's not going to be possible to force this unity by military power, political cohesion. It has to come from common understanding of the faith that unites us. So when we meet each other, we are on the same page. So what Rasulullah ﷺ did was to introduce once again the religion of Ibrahim alayhi, Islam, pure and simple, without the cultural and tribal interpretations. So while each tribe had their own deity, their own god, their own statue that they worship to differentiate themselves, Rasulullah ﷺ said, none of these are gods. Your God is one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and if you're all worshipping the same God, you're all equal, you're all brothers. There is no real conflict or difference between you. Before that, because I'm worshipping this God and you're worshipping that God, and maybe my God is better than your God. But when we are all worshipping the same God, then there's no need for conflict. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam launched an educational campaign. The instructions that came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the first ayah revealed was Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. The solution begins there. It doesn't begin by organizing an army, set up a state, take over the rule of government. No. But educate yourself and the people on the concept of La ilaha illallah. فَاعْلَمْ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. Allah instructed the Prophet in Surah Muhammad, فَاعْلَمْ, learn, understand that there is no God but Allah. Many of us think we understand that, but we don't. We understand simple conceptual idea, but how it applies in our lives, in every facet of our lives, we don't understand that. We commit shirk in different parts of our lives when we make decisions and choices, even though intellectually we think that there is no God but Allah. The Prophet ﷺ spent 13 years not teaching the people how to pray, how to fast, how to make wudu, arguing with other people over it. No. He spent the first 13 years in Mecca trying to plant firmly understanding of the real meaning of La ilaha illallah. If you look at all of the surah that were revealed in Mecca, their aim was to make sure this concept is very clear in every aspect of life. Take for example Surah Al-An'am, Surah Makkiyah. It's a long surah that came altogether 70,000 angels with it. From beginning to end, it talks about Tawheed. When you read it, you say it doesn't. It's talking about eating halal food, certain practices of the Jahiliyyah. We say all of that is about Tawheed. Because Tawheed doesn't mean just I believe in something and practice something else. Quraysh, they used to believe in God, but when they wanted animals, they said, this is for our husbands, these for our wives, this is for both of us. They have categories. They did not follow the commandments of Allah. So That's where they were violating Tawheed. When they dealt with their crops, same thing. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us a broad definition of what Tawheed is. When you say you believe in Allah as one and only, you have to cover all of these facets of your life. You have to purify them from shirk. The rest of the surah that were revealed in Mecca follow the same pattern, dealing with economic issues, dealing with social issues, in order to be true muwahhid. This educational process for 13 years focused on Tawheed resulted in about 70 people. We said, that's it. Small number. Of all the thousands and thousands of people, only 70 or so accepted Islam. Why? Because Rasulullah ﷺ was requiring fundamental change, a 180-degree change from those who are going to embrace Islam and follow. They have to put their culture aside, their understanding aside, and bring themselves back to the pure Islam. So it's naturally most adults, most of us are resistant to change. The way we were raised, based on our culture, that's what we think is right. We think others are weird or wrong. So for any leader to come and expect dramatic change from the adult population, it would be mistaken. The real solution is not in the adult population. Few of them are willing and have the tenacity to change. Majority refuse to change, resist change, insist on their traditional habits. Their cultural understanding is their religion. It's more important to them. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam invested time with who? To make the real change in Islam happen. With the young people. The young people around him took a lot of his attention. Take, for example, Abdullah ibn Abbas ibn Abdul Muttalib, the cousin of the Prophet. Al-Abbas was the uncle of the Prophet, brother of his father, but he was about his age, 2 years apart. And Al-Abbas, after accepting Islam, basically gave his young child, Abdullah, and made him a disciple of the Prophet. He would follow him all the time. And Rasulullah ﷺ loved him. He's his cousin, he's a young man, and he wanted to grow this man on the right path. So one day, as an example, he puts him behind him on his ride. And he says to him, Ya ghulam, O young man. Maybe he wasn't more than 10, 12 years old. إِنِّي أُعَلِّمُكَ كَلِمَاتٍ. I'm going to teach you some words. احفظ الله يحفظك. Keep Allah in mind, He'll keep you in mind. If you are with Allah, Allah is with you. اذكروني أذكركم. Remember me, I remember you. احفظ الله تجده تجاهك. Keep Allah, you will find Him coming your way. He's on your side, supporting you. إذا سألت فاسأل الله. If you ask Allah. Before Islam, people used to, every time they need something, they run to the gods, they offer a sacrifice, and they created these statues hoping that they would answer their requests. He said, don't do that. Ask Allah if you need something, because He's the only one who can give. وَإِذَا اسْتَعَنْتَ فَاسْتَعِنْ بِاللَّهِ. And if you depend on anyone, depend only on Allah. You can't depend on other human beings who are themselves in need of help. واعلم أن الأمة لو اجتمعت على أن ينفعوك بشيء Know that if the whole ummah, the whole nation comes together to try to benefit you with something, لن ينفعوك إلا بشيء قد كتبه الله لك. They will not be able to benefit you except with something that Allah has already written, decreed for you. واعلم أن الأمة لو اجتمعت على أن يضروك بشيء لن يضروك إلا بشيء قد كتبه الله عليك. And also know that if the whole ummah come together to try to harm you with something, they won't be able to, unless Allah has already decreed that it's going to happen anyway. رفعت الأقلام وجفت الصحف. The pens have been lifted and the ink has dried, signifying that this is qadr, decreed way before you were created. This investment from the Prophet ﷺ to teach this young man Islam and to make dua for him. He said, making dua for him, Allahumma faqihhu fi ad-din wa 'allimhu at-ta'wil. Oh Allah, give him the fiqh, the understanding of the deen, and teach him the interpretation of the Quran. Abdullah ibn Abbas is considered by all the Ummah as the scholar of the Quran, Habr al-Ummah, the best in the tafsir of the Quran, one of the top scholars of Islam of all times. So Rasulullah ﷺ, even though he had many adults around him, he knew that these adults had limited capacity for change, except few. Out of thousands, only about 70 were committed enough to drastically change their lives from the life of shirk and kufr before to the life of Islam, real Islam. That's why there's only 70 in 13 years. He knew that most of the change has to happen with the new generation, the kids. So he collected these children from his companions. Umar al-Khattab had a child, also named Abdullah ibn Umar, also one of the top scholars of Islam. Amr ibn al-As had a son also named Abdullah, also a top scholar. Abdullah ibn Zubayr is another scholar. His father, Zubayr ibn Awwam, great Sahaba. Before Islam, many of the names were Abdullah and Abdul Uzza. They were servants of Allah or Al-Uzza, these gods that they worship. But we see the change in the children, that their names reflected the new faith. They were named Abdullah, the servants of Allah, nothing else, reflecting this Tawheed. So to give you an analogy, if you see when they build highways and roads, they bring new palm trees. New young palm trees that are straight, and they plant them, and then they put some support around them to keep them straight. And they keep it until the tree takes strong roots and grows straight up and gaining the strength. Then they remove the wood from around it, because now it can stand in the face of the wind without bending right or left, front or back. They do not bring mature trees that are curved and bent and plant them and try to straighten them out. They won't. It's very difficult for us adults to make enough change to correct our various deformities that we have. We all have special cultural practices that we don't want to give up, even when it's not part of Islam. We maintain the way we eat, the way we dress, the way we talk, the way we think. may not be 100% compatible with Islam. That's why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam picked the straightest of the trees among his Sahaba, like Abu Bakr and Umar, people who before Islam were good. خيارهم في الجاهلية خيارهم في الإسلام إذا فقهوا. The best of them in the Jahiliyyah before Islam are the ones who are best in Islam if they have the understanding of Islam. But many who were bent in the Jahiliyyah, they could not fix themselves to catch Islam and refused, may have died on kufr. And as these trees are planted new, young, supported, so they are straight and they're strong, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he made sure to spend and invest time with the young people to grow strong future men, scholars, like Abdullah ibn Abbas, Abdullah ibn Umar, Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As, Abdullah ibn Zubayr, and many others. If we take, for example, Abdullah ibn Abbas, not only he was a scholar, but from his descendants came Al-Abbasiyyin, an empire, the Abbasid dynasty that lasted more than 500 years, the gold age of Islam. Most of the scholars that today we talk about come from that era, like Imam Bukhari and Muslim, like Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi'i, Imam Ahmad, Imam Thawri. All of these major scholars were in that era, that golden age of Islam. So this young man who Rasulullah taught became an ummah. There were over 34 Khalifas, Muslim Khalifas from his descendants. Islam was the widest area during that time. More work, more scholarly work has been done in that era. That's the investment. You don't look at, oh, he's just a child. Why would Rasulullah, instead of talking to Abu Sufyan, spend time with Abdullah ibn Abbas, his cousin? Why would he invest in him? Because this young man becomes a scholar and this young man becomes a leader. If we think like that for us to change the future from the way it is, we have to invest in the young people. We have to think of each one of these young people as a future leader, future ummah. That's their potential, if we cultivate that potential. But if we don't care how they grow up, if all of our ambition for them is for them to be a doctor, or an engineer, or a lawyer, or a teacher, that's the maximum we're expecting out of them. That's all that they can reach. But if we expect them to be a president, a senator, a real inventor, a real doctor, a real lawyer that will make a difference nationwide, globally. Okay? One of those people that transcend their time for the next 500 years or 1,000 years. People will remember their work. They can change the course of history. That's the potential of your child. If you dream big for him or her, they could be. But if you limit your dream for them, their dream will be smaller even than that. They may not be able to reach their dream. And that is influenced by the choices we give them, the education we provide them. What Rasulullah did, he spent a lot of time teaching them the real Islam. So when they grew up, they did not look at Islam as we do today, as their fathers did, but they looked at it as the real Islam. They carried it to the world. They united the world Today we are not, as adults, able to unite ourselves, even though we all claim to be Muslims. We fight over our disagreements and misinterpretations. For us to have a better future than what we had, our children have to be better than us. We have to invest in them in proper Islamic education so that the future will be different. If we make them photocopies of ourselves, then we have not changed anything. We can expect more of the same. And if they are less educated about the faith, then we are in more trouble than we are. So we cannot end all the divisions and conflicts and misinterpretations around the Muslim world, or even around the country here, or around our community, where each group has their own little masjid, they're happy, think they are right and everybody else is wrong, because it matches their cultural expectation. We will never unite, we'll never work together, we'll never have the same Ramadans and the same needs, because we're carrying our baggage with us from overseas. We insist on practicing the deformed Islam that we learned overseas here. As adults, we are busy. We don't want to spend time learning the real Islam and coming closer to each other and closer to Allah. We want what matches our understanding and our interpretation of Islam. So we insist on dividing our community. So you end up with ethnic masjids based on different countries and different madhabs and so on. But this is not sustainable. Muslims in America increasing in number, but they're not increasing in unity. They're not becoming together to be able to achieve the great goals. The future will only change if we invest today in teaching the new generation of Muslims the pure, correct Islam and not mix it with our cultural biases. If we invest in Islamic schools, Islamic education, then we are going to guarantee a better future. Our children will be better than us. And that, I think, is a goal, achievable. But it takes a choice that you have to make. When you, next week or the week after, choose where your child is going to, which school. If Islam is not on your list, and you're basing it on price or basing it on convenience or glamorous campus, then it's more of the same. But if we want to make real change, choose Islamic education, we say, I want my child to be a real Muslim, a true Muslim, a future leader, then there is great hope in our future. There will be the possibility of the next generation of Muslims in this country will be united, will be strong, will be focused, and will be successful. They shouldn't be compromised on their academic performance. They should be equal or better than anything out there. And that we can say safely about this school and many Islamic schools, that Muslim children are performing better, with 1 or 2 grades better than their peers out there. Proven through standardized testing, proven through evaluations by independent observers. So we're not compromising the quality, but we are trying to make the goal of Islamic education as a #1 priority, because that's the first ayah revealed to the Prophet, and that's the most important. For some of us, it's not a big deal, it's no difference, because we don't understand the difference. Allah said in Surah Al-Zumar, قُلْ هَلْ يَسْتَوِي الَّذِينَ يَعْلَمُونَ وَالَّذِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ إِنَّمَا يَتَذَكَّرُ أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ. Say, those who know, are they equal to those who don't know? Only those who have the intellectual capacity to understand will know the difference. So my brothers and sisters, make the right choice for your child. Make sure that your child is one of those who may change the world in the future. Make sure the best gift that you give them is not just convenience or toys, but the best Islamic education possible. And then you will be very pleased with the results in the future.